Hello everyone and welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. We have a replay today. I ran into HanDHun on the just lobby surfing type deal, and he turned out to be a fan of the channel and asked me to look at this replay, maybe give some constructive comments, feedback and things like that. And just before we get there, I want to note I am just a lowly sergeant. My advice is what it is, and take it for what it's worth. I'm not Blitzwar, I am not someone like that who has this game down pat, but where I can help, I'm certainly happy to do so. So, first, general comments. I wanted to say that this was a very fun game for me, I think, because HanDHun was a incredibly determined opponent, so we got into some back and forths and gained and lost ground, and that's always a fun thing to do. So, second thing I would say in this one is just, you're going to be hearing me do a little bit of criticizing this time. Please trust me, it's all well-intentioned. I'm not saying, oh, you're the worst for doing anything like this, that, or the other. It's just happy to try to help where I can. So the Dap and Longbow opener is something that I've seen before. It's something I've done before. It's something that can be very powerful, and yet is also a bit of a risk. And you always have to be keeping in mind sort of what's going on around this section, because the Longbow is just that valuable. I mean, it's 150 points in your opener compared with combined with the Dap, that's over 200 some points. More than 20% of your deployment's being spent right there, which means it has to give you returns. But it definitely can. You can see I'm doing a bit of an imitation of it on this side. Salamandra and Sokol, much cheaper with the Salamandra than the Longbow, but also lower performing. And that does sort of stop you on the left-hand side. You need to keep these things moving right off the bat. And speaking of, by the way, this is a bit of an issue. So your Dap is hovering. He has to come up into the air before he can shoot, and that gives my Sokol the advantage in that fight. So that is part of why the Dap died, and now your Longbow is sort of on his own. And to sort of add on to that, your motorized and mechanized components are not really all coordinated together. So what a lot of people will do is they'll go motorized up to here, then they'll cut left, or they'll cut right, and they'll go into these woods, or they'll go into the woods on the right-hand side and allow their infantry to get into positions without being shot in the open. Because what's happening here is a bunch of Terra Musties and KTs are just getting stupid high rates of fire on things, and even the M1 Abrams will grind them down eventually because, you know, 1 point of damage per shot, but look at how many shots we're taking. Right, so this was something, I think it was a good deployment. I think it was maybe not the best execution on this side of the field. So if you come up here, you get your motorized stuff either unloaded and or moving forward around this section. Maybe move the M1 Abrams around to the right, let him shoot in, but stay out of range of things like Terra Musties and Charioteers, and then you have nice fire support, and then you have a nice stable position, and you can go from there. So Syria's coming in. This was meant to take out your M1 Abrams, but the M1 Abrams is already gone, so yeah, it is what it is. On this side, so this is an interesting thing. You can see I do have ATGMs shooting in at you, and that means get vehicles and things away from these woods. Generally a safe bet anyway. Most people will do some sort of ATGM on this side. And the KRKKs, I mean, this was just to see if it worked from my side. But this is a fine position if you can hold it, and I like that you're moving light riflemen up. If you've already seen I have a strong position here and a strong position in Bravo, you should be moving into Fox. All of this stuff should not be sitting back. You should be going, making sure that you grab as much ground as you can, and then you can take and hold and start to grind out my forces that way. So I like these light riflemen moving forward. I'm not entirely happy about these guys staying back, only because, and I'm not saying you could have known this beforehand, far from it, but once you've seen how many points I spent on the right-hand side, once you've seen the point spent on the left-hand side, then you can go forward into the Fox. And I mean, I'm saying this, let me just show you as well. This is the neutral. I have Yakety 90 on this side and nothing in the middle, nothing even back here. It's a straight shot into the home zone because I'm relying on a Salamandra and a little bit of scouting here to tell me if something's going wrong and needs quick response. But that means that you can take all of this land and not really have too much trouble holding it. It's a really tough thing, honestly. I mean, I was playing with some guys the other day, and one of them said, you know, the hardest thing for him was, the hardest thing for him was figuring out when he's done well and figuring out when he's done poor, and figuring out, you know, what that actually means for the game. Because, yeah, so M3A2 Bradley, this guy is way too expensive to be fighting and dying Yakety 90. That was an 80-point kill off of 10-point line infantry. You can't let that happen. See, those really expensive Bradleys, yes, they're very powerful. Yes, they can kill things decently well, but they need to be screened. It's almost like if you're doing a tank push and you have some infantry out in front. So Maybe try and think of it like that. Chaparral positioning was good if you had anything left in Gulf to defend it, so nothing really you can do there, other than maybe, and yeah, it looks like you are moving the pivettes back. At the second that Chaparral dies, the pivot should be moving back, and never ever ever turn on those radar guns, unless you are taking a shot, basically, especially if you see planes up and in the air. And yeah, so Light Riflemen sparring with CC are just, they're very good. Okay, this brings me to another thing. US decks have better air tabs than Baltic decks. I think most would probably agree with that. Maybe you get the rare guy saying, oh no, Baltic air better than anything else, but probably not. By the way, nice firing concave. This is good. This is what you need to set up. Here is what you need to set up. Here is what you need to... So if you push these guys forward and get a firing concave going, you can keep me from getting down these down this section of the zone, and then just sort of grind me back toward my side of the board, right? So that was a really good firing concave. Do that more often. Get LVTP, 7A1s, maybe not small all the time. I mean, they're very good. They can put out a lot of DPS, but they need support. But that was a very nice firing concave. Anyway, air tab. No planes yet. And actually, I don't think I saw a single US plane the entirety of the game, and that really surprised me because I'll start sending out those Hawks, right? And I fully expected them to get intercepted. I fully expected them to die to air superiority fighters, to things like that, and just be worth it in terms of, okay, I need that one bomb right here, right now. But you can't let them live that long, because if you do, they'll really get you. So this is fine. The Rifleman 90 here, nice support from the M13A3. Okay, Navy SEALs. Yeah, I mean, some people like them, some people don't. I'm personally not a fan, and the reason I'm personally not a fan is I think they're frag launcher infantry, right? That means that they can't really kill vehicles. They will absolutely mulch infantry, and to be fair, you do that to me a fair number of times. So let's look at this. 9 men left, 10 in the Navy SEALs, 8, and now the Hawk is online, so we'll see those frag rounds starting to go. Only a couple shots there, but, I mean, you're still scoring hits. I think I was moving away maybe a little bit too fast. Yeah, the Hawk's offline. They will, I mean, I was terrified of that, and I immediately retreated, right, because my own Iroquois aren't exactly the best at dealing with infantry. So that was a good use there, but they need to have riflemen surrounding them, because they cannot take on vehicles. Yeah, here's the Hawk 51 I was talking about. So it's just a cheap thing, right, 60-point plane, but the bombs are surprisingly precise, and even if it's just taking out Rifleman 90, that will eventually add up if you let me get away, right? So I did a 60-point buy, I just got, what, 15-point kill? So 45 points more than I've paid for myself, but the point is, get it when it's still looking for 60 points to retain that value. Alright, so the Rangers, V150s, yeah, I mean, that's a nice screen. You can also think about putting some recon here in case you don't want to hold in the woods, and then that'll let you spot everything on that side of the forest, but it usually also means that you've lost that side of the map. Okay, this is good. This is the support that I was talking about earlier. So Navy SEALs moving forward, M13A3, and if you can, so the Ranico will, maybe unload a little bit sooner, because these Rifleman 90, Ranico will always give them a hard time, but you could have used them in conjunction with the Navy SEALs to get the kill on Ranico, and now it's a bit tougher, because, I mean, they're elite infantry, they're going to do pretty well, and now the Hawk Bomber's coming in again, I'm sorry about that, I used Hawks a lot, but I mean, people use Hawks a lot because they're cheap and they're good, so I guess if you're playing against Baltic, or in this case Baltic Moto, just sort of be aware of the tools that your opponent has and can bring to the board. Good cheap bombers get spammed all the time. There's a French version, the Entendant, that is... Usually people will take one card of that. I think they get like, what, 4, maybe 5 if it's a French deck, but 4 I think in Eurocore, not entirely sure. And it's the most obnoxious thing ever. One thing I will say, this constant train of reinforcements, one, good determination, and way to spend your points instead of letting them float. On the other hand, you're bringing out a lot of single riflemen, and if you wait just a little bit, you can send them out in groups of 2 or 3, and it might seem a little bit contradictory, but it could actually get them to you faster, because if you queue up enough deployments in a row, so let's say I'm constantly sending out 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit, you'll put things on the board faster than they can deploy out. There is there's a time delay between each unit that gets sent out of your deployment zone. So you can take out a group of 3 or 4 and then split them when they get onto the field. That can save a little bit of time. So this was just me saying, okay, well, we've been fighting a lot over here. Let me see how your defenses are other places. So that's why the seaplane's out, that's why the T-55 is here. I mean, this is a full USA deck, right? So you have tanks heavier than the M1 Abrams. Because this guy, let's see. So the M1 Abrams is what, 15 frontal armor, 65 accuracy, 13 AP. The Pion, 10 frontal armor, 17 AP. So, yeah, I mean, they can both pen each other. That'd actually be a decently tough fight if you had a good angle. Anyway, if you had maybe a surprise shot to start it off, be pretty reliable. But the Hawks are just coming in again, and yeah, I mean, I lost a unit of infantry there. But I also was able to spot and kill things like the Rangers and Stingers. And I think part of that is lack of long-distance anti-air. So you have to sort of make a choice. Air superiority fighters or long-range anti-air. And the games where you can't keep those up, you lose. And I've done that myself recently as well. It's just like, I mean, people were commenting about it the other day. I got bombed to hell and back. And I didn't really have a good answer for it. The only reason that I survived there is because my opponent's bombing runs were not well chosen. But that's a far sight different than saying that it was a good thing that I let myself get bombed that much. I do like the Rangers pushing up here. The Carl Gustav M2 is a perfectly good secondary, and you saw I had a vehicle up here, so that's very nice. And these guys should be able to kill Erkois, you'd think. Yeah, the automatic is sort of insufficient on its own. And then this is good, so maintaining this firing concave, padding it out. I've bombed this a couple of times now, and I was happy to see. So KTs versus light riflemen. Actually, KTs are the same price. So I don't know. It's a little bit interesting. Okay, I apologize. I've been very critical. I don't usually get that critical. I mean, shit, my replays have been compared previously to high school presentations of, oh, this is happening, that's cool. But, I don't know, I felt I would really sort of go into it this time. And, okay, M113A3, I've done that before as well. It's a cheap way to scout out, and then the response from Navy SEALs is very nice. So, you moving those guys over. The issue that you had is, again, my air tab has been uncontested this whole game. So the second I saw stuff moving over, that's going to be a bombing run, dead Navy SEALs. 35 point nearly kill right there, and even a single man from the Ranico Yekri might reasonably kill him if he's panicked, and my Ranico are not, although they were shaken. So, you know, a bit of a mixed bag. Another thing to think about, when I pushed your lines here then stopped, usually that's because it didn't go well enough for me to do that, and that gives you information, right? So, I know you're pushing being back on this side, and this was a very good thing, but you could also have considered pushing into Fox when my offensive failed. Because it was really just, it's one of those where you always want to go where your enemy is weak, and you keep hitting me where I've already shown you that I have a strong deployment. And yeah, it did eventually work, right? So my Ranico are dead, my Iroquois are dead, all of that elite infantry gone, but it took you a big investment to do it, and it made you vulnerable, because here comes another Hawk bombing run, and that's going to land right on top of 2 units of infantry, Riflemen 90 and Rangers, and that has to hurt. That right there has hurt you pretty much just as much, if not more, combined with the Navy SEALs getting bombed, as you hurt me pushing me out of this position. And that's not something that you can really afford to do. It's very common for offensives, right? Like, you're gonna lose units, and I understand that. But try not to lose more than you have to, right? And I mean, that's a dot moment. I don't mean to give stupid advice of, oh, hey, you win this game by not losing. But you get what I'm saying with that? It's like, make sure you have adequate support, don't let your opponent get any freebies. This Pivad's moving right into Yekri 90, even if it works out well, I'd argue is probably a bad decision, because it risks way more than it had to, and that seaplane's going to come in and get a revenge kill. My Yekri 90 are only 10 points, that Pivad's is 40, so this guy, you know, that's what allowed me to spot the Pivads. Spotting the Pivads is why this plane went in, and then your gun was still online and I could take the shot. So, T-55M, sparring on that side, and the firing computer reset was a good thing. That's why I had to retreat. And then, yeah, I mean, M1 Abrams can reasonably well screen out infantry. I don't know, it's an interesting thing. I would have liked to see... It's hard to have good support if you're constantly refilling your front line, and I get that, and it's also sort of what you've been doing here. On the other hand, good support is what makes it so that you don't have to refill your front line. So Syria getting the kill on the M1 Abrams, yeah, Just ASF or better AA net would have made such a big difference. I would have lost the Hawks, I would have lost the Seaplane potentially, I would have lost the Syria, and I mean, let's think about it. If I send the Syria in, it's a 120 point plane after an M1 Abrams, and even if I get it, if I lose the plane, that's good for you. That's easy for you to replace and hard for me to replace. So that's the sort of trade that you want to be making, even if it doesn't seem like it at the time. That's the sort of trade that you definitely want to be doing. This was an interesting thing as well. My Mi-8T KT was sent over here just to sort of investigate and be rapid response, and the fact that he got out alive then told me, okay, you have Rifleman here, you have an M113A3, and I'm able to respond decently well, but this is good. You've pushed me back on that side of Gulf. What probably could have followed, if you had a little bit more up here, is cutting across to the left. Try to resecure this forest. I'd argue on this map, the forest between Gulf and Foxtrot is one of the most critical sections on the entire map. And the reason why is if you control this, then it's very hard for someone on my side to really control the town or the other section here because my reinforcement routes are threatened. So that's what you need to take to get Gulf. But then once you have this forest, you can attack out of it and up onto the high ground and threaten Fox as well. So that one forest is the key to two different zones. And that should, I think, always be your priority. Kartanyikri, at this point, I think it was just behind on value, and that's a tough thing to fight as well. Because even where you push through my lines, I could just get more Kartanyikri, things like that, and go through. So I don't think anything here reflects on mistakes that you made. I think it was just you're making good moves just a little bit later than needed to happen in order for them to be winning moves. And I think that's an important distinction, because if you fought me over on this side at the beginning of the game like you did here, that would have been a very, very different story. I would have lost my infantry earlier, and that would have been much more in your favor. At this point, by the way, we were talking in the chat, and so micro sort of seemed to lapse, probably for both of us, just doing a, hey, how you doing? Thanks for the game and all that, Hawk Bomber. Just, oh man, so many Hawks. I think I purchased my entire set, my entire card of Hawks this game, and I didn't lose a single one. And that's something you cannot allow to happen. You can see Kartanyikri sneaking up. This was just to try and secure this town. I figured they'd be spotted. I also, at this point, didn't really care. And that's something you have to be careful of as well. So, I mean, first off, nice kill on the M2A2 Bradley. Good position. And nice ATGM. The TOE2s are so flipping deadly. But when you start to get behind on kills in the game, you have to be aware of things like that, because your opponent will have the flexibility to throw some things at you and see what sticks. And if you kill some of my infantry, if I lose 40 points but I'm up by 200, I don't care. If my infantry get through your lines and get me 200 points in kills, I've just taken a little advantage and made it a big one. So, apologies for being really, really preachy. This episode is, well, this recording, it was not my intention. I just, my hope is that you watch this, you watch how I play, you see how you played, could have done things a little bit differently, and then we have a rematch one day and you just absolutely pancake me. That's what I want to see. So, HanDHun, hope you were watching this, and hope we get to play again, and it does not go in my favor the second time around.